Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Failing is Not an Option, where we are all things marriage and family therapy, not just for the MFT exam, but also for how we work in the field with our families, couples, individuals, whatever the case may be. I had a lot of people telling me that they missed Wednesday's night study group, but that's okay because every Friday night I will be releasing the question review for those that did miss Wednesday's night study group. But have no fear, it is every Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. Central Time because I am located in Chicago. We're going to just take this maybe 25-30 minutes to go over some of the questions that we did Wednesday night, as well as some of the questions that we just didn't get the opportunity to go over. The group is only for 1 hour, but within that 1 hour, it is so powerful, and we are all able to ping pong like different ideas off of each other's heads, take a different look at some of the different concepts, and having a better way to understand how to find the best answer. So let's go ahead, take a dive into these questions. And like always, we are treating these questions as if we are taking the actual MFT national exam. Let's get started with the first one. Like always, feel free, pause this video, find the best answer before I find the best answer. The first question says, a 14-year-old boy is acting out at school. During sessions, the therapist notices that the mother consistently defends the boy while the father criticizes him. Which systemic concept best describes this interaction? So before we even take a look at some of those answer responses, let's go back and let's look at the vignette again, right? So we have a 14-year-old boy, he's acting out at school. That's one thing that we see in this vignette. The mother consistently defends the boy and the father criticizes him. So we have three different things that are going on within this vignette. Which one of these answer responses is going to correlate with what's going on in this vignette? The first one says triangulation for A. I like that answer response, but let's look at some of the rest of them. B says positive feedback. Now, actually, Wednesday night, we went over positive feedback and negative feedback as well as homeostasis, and it was really good. There was, I cannot remember that beautiful young lady who helped us get a better understanding of positive and negative feedback. We won't do it here. I have another video that I am going to upload, and I can talk about it in that one. But positive feedback, we know, amplifies, right? It's making a change. Negative feedback is correcting. And homeostasis is what? It's like that status quo that we have, right? So we don't see any of that going on in the vignette, but we do see some triangulation because in the beginning, I said what? There were three things that were going on in this vignette, right? We have the child's acting out as well as the mother that is defending him. That's two. And then the third person being drawn in that criticizes him is the father. So now we have like two that is against one. There's a triangulation that's going on, so making A the best answer. Twin 13-year-old boys are in therapy with their father and stepmother after one of the boys were caught at school with a small amount of marijuana. In therapy, that son says he has been smoking for almost a year, since around the time the stepmother joined the family. What is the MFT most likely to say when assessing family functioning from a systemic perspective, right? So let's go back. Let's take a look at it, right? We have twin boys, we have a father, and we have a stepmother. One of the boys was caught at school smoking marijuana. The son says he's been smoking for a year, and then the stepmother joins the family. So systemically thinking, what would a therapist say to this family, right? A says to the boys, how have you been doing in school? The issue with A is it only includes the boys, and we have an entire family that is being discussed in the vignette. Get rid of A, right? B says to the family, what happens when one of the boys gets in trouble? Okay, I like B, but let's take a look at C. To the stepmother, what has it been like for you to come into this family? Now, the issue with C is that it only includes his stepmother, and we have an entire family that is being discussed in this vignette. D says to the father, how often do you use marijuana and what do you use it for or whatever? The issue with D is it's the same thing that's going on between A and C. They're only including one individual. But if you take a look at B, to the family, what happens when one of the boys gets in trouble? The family is being included. When you got a question that includes the family, you want to make sure that the family is going to be included in the answer response, unless there's evidence that tells you not to, okay? Now, during the session, Marcus, a 29-year-old client, says, I keep picturing what it would be like if my boss wasn't around anymore. I know where I could get something to make that happen. I'm not saying I'm going to do it today, but it's hard to stop thinking about it. The therapist is concerned about Marcus's statement. The question is, what should the therapist do first? This is the first question. So when we see first questions, we are to do what? exactly what you need to do right then and there. Is it something that's like immediately that needs to be done? Absolutely. It is something that needs to be done first, so we can't delay it happening, right? So if we go back and take a look at the vignette, he's picturing what it would be like if his boss wasn't around. I know where I could get something to make it happen. I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but it's kind of hard for him to stop thinking about it. And now the therapist is concerned about the statements that he's making, right? So A says, focus on Marcus's underlying work stress and redirect him towards healthier ways of coping. That sounds nice, right? How about we not talk about the fact that you want your boss dead or whatever, and let's talk about some healthier ways of coping, right? Sounds nice, doesn't it? Let's take a look at B. B says, ask Marcus to create a written safety plan that outlines steps to avoid acting on these thoughts. Now, the problem with B is that normally safety plans is for suicidal ideation, not homicidal ideation. Are you really gonna, here, write this out, and you know what? Write this out, and how can you avoid, acting on these thoughts? No. C says, inform Marcus of the limits of confidentiality. Okay. D says, note Marcus's disclosure in the clinical record and continuing monitoring some of his thoughts and his behavior over time. Now, the issue with D is that he's telling you that he knows where I could get something to make it happen. I'm not saying I'm going to do it today, but it's kind of hard for him to stop thinking about it. So here's the thing about this question, and I think we discussed this tonight that we went over the questions. The obvious answer is not always going to be there. And even for this question, it's kind of hard because you don't see anything that says a success for his intent. What's the level of his intent? What's the level of his risk? Is he really going to do it? Trying to find out what the risk level is going to be. None of that is mentioned out of these 4 responses. But out of these 4 responses, which one of them is the best response of the 4? Right? A says, again, focus on Marcus's underlying work stress. But A is also ignoring that he has said he's thinking about what life would be like if his boss wasn't around. And he knows where he could get something from that can make it happen. That can't be ignored. So to focus on his work stress has you ignoring the red flag in the vignette. B says to ask Marcus to create a safety plan that outlines steps to avoid acting on these thoughts. Safety plans are for suicidal ideation. They're typically not used for homicidal ideation. And creating a safety plan wouldn't be the first step that you would do. If it was suicidal ideation, the first thing that you would do is to assess. So B would be out. D says to note his disclosures in a clinical record. And again, D has you ignoring the fact that he has said, I've been picturing what life would be like. I know what I can do, and I know where something is where I can do and make it happen, or whatever the case may be. The rest of them don't make any sense. C doesn't really make any sense either, because it's not even a clear plan as to what you're going to do with the thoughts that he's saying. But if you take a look at C, it says inform Marcus of his limits of confidentiality. That's you also, when I assess you, I'm letting you know right now, depending on your level of risk and how you are going to react to your boss, I am going to have to warn somebody else. It's going to be outside of my control once he assesses his risk level, leaving C being the best answer. Always, always, always keep in mind, the obvious answer is not always going to be there. I've had many people tell me, I'm looking for an answer response that says this. If it's not there, you can't make it be there. So keep that in mind. Oh, I forgot we did pop quizzes last night. A 12-year-old girl is brought into therapy by her mother. And pause this video and see if you can find what this answer is without the answer responses. Her mother reports that she worries because her daughter has been losing weight and she needs to take nutritional supplements to get her dietary needs met. The daughter reports that she is comfortable with her body and is not worried about gaining weight. She says that she is more of a selective eater and does not like a lot of foods because of their texture and their taste. What is the most likely diagnosis here? Let's go back and read it. We're going to treat it the same way, right? She reports that she worries about her daughter losing weight. She has to get her supplements. She's comfortable with her body. She's not worried about gaining weight, but she's just more of a selective eater, and she has some issues with the texture and the taste of certain foods. This answer response is going to be what? It's going to be your restrictive food intake disorder. It's the disorder that has you being a picky eater. You don't really like certain foods because you don't like the texture of it. You don't like how it tastes. You don't like how it feels when it's in your mouth and when you're eating it. It's very easy sometimes to get tripped up by some of these questions if you are not paying attention to some of the core symptoms of a diagnosis. One of the things that they mention is saying that she's losing weight. Losing weight is also one of the symptoms of the restricted food intake disorder. Okay, but it's also a symptom of anorexia. But anorexia does not come with the person saying that they're not worried about their weight. People who are diagnosed with anorexia are worried about gaining weight. Yes, they have lost a lot of weight. They are worried about gaining weight because they don't want to be fat. Restrictive food taking disorder does not have those same symptoms. So there's a difference between the two. Don't get tripped up with those. Michael is given a subpoena to appear in court on behalf of his client. Although he has been a licensed marriage and family therapist for 4 years, this is his first time receiving a subpoena and he is unsure of what to do next. What should Michael do first? Now, again, this is the first question, and it's also one of your legal questions because we see something mentioned about a subpoena. This is something we're going to do first. We're not going to wait to do it. We can't say, oh, we'll do it tomorrow, we'll do it next week. It has to be done when, right? We have to do this. The very first thing we have to do. So he was given a subpoena. He's been a therapist for 4 years, but this is his first time having one, and he doesn't know what to do next. Keep those things in mind as we're navigating these answer responses. A says, contact the client to discuss the implications of providing the requested information. Okay, let's look at the rest of them. B says, determine if the subpoena is legally valid. Okay, let's look at the rest of them. Comply with the order to avoid being held in contempt of court. Okay, let's look at D. Claim the psychotherapist patient privilege on a client's behalf. Oh, God, some of these answer responses are just like, which one is the right one? But if you are able to follow the steps of what a therapist should do when they are given a subpoena, it should be easy for you to navigate some of these questions. Let's do this. A says, contact the client to discuss the implications of providing the requested information. Now, the thing about A is, slow down. You're now doing too much. Because if you go back to the question, it says he was given a subpoena to appear in court on behalf of his client. Who did that subpoena come from? Where did it come from? No judge? No lawyer, nobody. You were just given a subpoena. So now you're moving too fast. You don't even know who this is from, if it's even valid. So you have to make sure that a subpoena is valid first, right? C says comply with the order. You are supposed to comply, but what kind of complying are we doing here? Because you don't even know if it's valid or not. You're just going to show up in court without a court order from a judge? You can't do that. D says claim patient privilege on the client's behalf. Okay, slow down. We got to make sure it's valid first, and then once it's valid, you may do privilege. You may claim privilege, but you have to make sure that it is valid first. Think about these questions. The obvious is not going to be there. I know I've seen answer responses that says consult with your legal, your lawyer or the client's lawyer or whatever, but you don't see that answer response. So you have to go with one of the best responses out of the 4. Don't always check for the obvious. I can't say that enough. Don't be looking for the obvious because sometimes the obvious will not present itself. All right, now another pop quiz. In Bowen therapy, the core goal is increasing and decreasing what? Pause the video, answer the question. I think this is kind of pretty much of an easy one. Everybody's like, oh, I can know Bowen pretty well because it's one of the simple and easy ones, right? But the core goals of Bowen is to increase differentiation, and we are going to decrease anxiety. If you got this right, kudos to you. Thumbs up. All right, a couple presents for therapy reporting heightened tension. They tell the MFT that they never fight in front of their children ages 3 and 7, but they frequently get into screaming matches when the children are not at home. They report a strong desire to repair their relationship despite one partner recently revealing infidelity that occurred 5 years ago. Which one of the following should the MFT do at this point in the initial session? Okay, so we have an initial session, which means that it's the first session, right? So it will be what we are are doing first, right? Let's go back and read it as we always do. Two children, 3 and 7, they get into screaming matches, but the children are not at home when they do it. They want to repair their relationship, and one partner was just revealed that infidelity occurred 5 years ago. So what are we doing in this initial session with them? A says contact law enforcement to assess for child safety. The issue with A is that we don't contact the police, right? We don't need to contact law enforcement. If the children was in an unsafe environment, we're not calling the police. We're going to contact Child Protective Services, okay? B says assess for intimate partner violence. I like B. Let's look at the rest of them. C says reconsider the unit of treatment. That's a bit much because we haven't assessed yet and we don't know if there truly is like some physical or some domestic violence that's going on. And if it were, then we would, right? But we don't know that yet because we haven't assessed yet. D says develop a treatment plan to specifically address both the conflict and everything that's going on with their infidelity. The issue with D is that we are ignoring that in parentheses it says screaming matches. Do we know if those screaming matches lead into anything else? We won't know that unless we do what first? B. Assess for intimate partner violence. It's the first session. You want to make sure that there is not any intimate partner violence going on, because if it is, what do we need to do? We need to reconsider the unit of treatment. Makes sense, right? First thing you do is going to assess. If it is intimate partner violence, then it becomes a contradiction to family therapy. Then we would reconsider the unit of treatment, making B being the best answer for this question. An MFT is conducting an intake assessment with the man who has a flat affect, monotone voice. He reports not having friends or a desire to make any. He also does not report any activities that he enjoys to do. The client says that he has no reason yet to either trust or distrust the therapist. The client most likely qualifies for a diagnosis of what? Yes, here's one of your classic diagnosis questions where we need to be making sure that the core symptoms being presented are also going to match one of the best answer responses in those response section, right? So if you go back and take a look, let's look at some of those core symptoms. Flat affect, monotone voice, no desire to have any friends. He doesn't report any activities that he enjoys to do, and he has no reason yet to either trust or distrust the therapist. So let's take a look at them. A says schizoid personality disorder. Okay, let's take a look at the other ones. B says major depressive disorder. My issue with B is for MDD, nothing is mentioned in there about having a low mood, loss of interest in things, feeling of hopelessness, or not wanting to enjoy things that he once used to do and now he doesn't want to do them anymore. None of that is mentioned. Substance use disorder, there is no mention of him using any substances, so C would automatically be out. D says schizophrenia. There are no hallucinations, delusions, or disorganized speech that are mentioned, so you automatically get rid of D, leaving us with A. Even if you did not know what A was, if you knew what the other three were, it would get you to your best answer. Schizoid personality disorder. Those that are diagnosed with that, they don't want or desire to have any close relationships with anybody, and they rather do things by themselves. That's your classical schizoid personality disorder vignette. Alrighty. The mother of a 4-year-old girl comes for a consultation about recent changes in her daughter's behavior. She is concerned because for the past 2 months, the child has been forgetting to go to the toilet and soiling herself during the day, both at nursery school and at home. The girl seems unworried about soiled underwear, not embarrassed at school, and the mother says that she's at her wit's end. The mother reports that the girl was toilet trained at the age of 2. The best treatment approach would be to do what? So let's go back and look. So she's got some recent changes. She's been concerned for the past 2 months, forgetting to go to the bathroom. She's soiling herself during the day at school and at home. The girl is unworried about it, and she was toilet trained at the age of 2. So the best treatment approach would be what? A says employing behavioral techniques and exploring the child's family relationships. My issue with A is that it's a little bit too broad, right? It's not. So if we explore the child's family relationships, how does that help us understand why this 4-year-old was potty trained at the age of 2, but now she's regressing? That's what A does to me. It's not specific enough, right? And it's not a treatment approach, right? To just explore, okay? Now, B says involving the mother and any other significant adults in a program of behavior modification. The issue with B is that it includes at the end behavior modification, because like we know like bedwetting and stuff, you use behavior techniques to help with that, right? But the whole thing about it is you want to involve the mother and other significant adults. What significant adults? Who are they talking about? There's a mother and a 4-year-old that's mentioned. What other significant adults are they talking about? So get rid of B. C says assessing for any recent stress at school and at home and then developing a program of a behavior modification. Okay, I like C, but let's take a look at D. D says conducting individual play therapy to assess for recent trauma and then family therapy. Now, the issue is with D is that assess for recent trauma. What recent trauma? We can't assess for any recent trauma because it's not mentioned in the vignette. Don't add anything up there that's not in there. I can see it's different if we see some core symptoms of trauma, but it's not mentioned up there. So don't add to it. Use what you have to find the best answer. Now, I will say this, and this is what I've been telling everybody. If that is the best answer of the 4, then by golly, it's probably the right one. But if there's another response that trumps that one that sounds just a tad bit better because what is mentioned in that one is not mentioned in that vignette, then choose the other one. Okay? C says assess for any recent stress at school or at home and then develop a program of behavior modification. That is your best treatment approach. Obviously, there's some type of stress going on either at school or at home while she's regressing. And then you're going to do a behavior modification. That's what you typically do for like bedwetting. You do behavior modification plans with them to help with that. Okay? Making C the best answer. While in session, Kyle informed his therapist that he had been thinking about how life would be for others if he no longer existed. He says that he mentioned it to his friends, but they normalized his thoughts and were no help. Kyle and his family have no known history of suicidal ideation or intent. What should be the therapist's next course of action? All right, this is your next course of action question. So typically, like your next questions is like, what do I need to do directly after what is just being told to me, right? It needs to be your next thing that you are going to do. Not next week, not a follow-up, but what you're going to do next, right? Pay attention to how this question is worded. You are in session with this client. So you should be choosing an answer response that is going to have you doing what's next while you are in session. Not next week, not a follow-up, okay? Now, he's been thinking about how life would be for others if he no longer existed. His friends normalized his thoughts. He has no known history of suicidal ideation. This is a very low-risk suicidal ideation question, okay? A says immediately contact local officials to get hospitalized. I just said this is a low-risk suicide ideation question. A is high risk. We don't even know. There's no plan. There's no intent. We don't even know any of that. He's just said he's been thinking about it. B says normalize the thoughts because he didn't say that he wanted to harm himself. Please, for the love of God, if you see a question that is talking about someone wanting to kill themselves or to kill somebody else, that's not normal. So do not normalize it. It's not normal to want to kill yourself. It's not normal to want to kill somebody else. Normalizing it make it seem like it's okay. No, it's not okay. We need to intervene, and normalizing it is not an intervention. It's just you probably saying, I'm sorry that you feel this way. You're not the only person that feel this way. Other people feel this way. No. You need to intervene, okay? C says develop a safety plan to address Kyle's suicide ideation. No. You cannot develop a safety plan before you conduct a risk assessment, which is D. Before you can create a safety plan, you must know the risk. If it's low risk, there's a step that you take. If it's moderate risk, medium risk, whatever you say, it's still a step that you have to take. If it's high risk, there's still a step that you have to take if it's included in the question. It depends on how the question is going to be worded, which is going to lead you to your best answer. Listen, Out of the 4 answer responses, if D said something else that made no sense and C was the only best answer, then C would be the right answer. This is what I want people to understand. Take away sometimes the obvious and put something else in place of that so that you can look at it from a different frame of mind. Because if you take a look at this question, what should the therapist's next course of action could be? C and D are your little typical responses that you are going to get. If you take away D and it said something completely different that made absolutely no sense, such as, I'm trying to think of something else that you could say in place of it that would make no sense. Maybe immediately contact local officials to get Kyle hospitalized is A. If D would have said call 911 and call his parents, C would be the best answer. Because there's no reason for us to call 911 because it's not a high enough risk. So I'm trying to work on now, even in a group, I sometimes will alter question responses to get rid of the obvious, because sometimes the obvious is not going to be there. I try my best to do that because I want us all to be thinking like it's the actual exam, if that makes sense. D is the best answer. You can't create a safety plan without first knowing the risk. Keep that in mind. It just depends on what those answer responses says to you. A family brings in their teenage son for a repeated bedwetting. The parents adjust their responses. When he wets the bed, they calmly clean up and reassure him, which gradually reduces anxiety in accidents. Now, this is one of your positive and your negative feedback loops question again. Keep in mind, positive feedback loops amplifies. Negative feedback loops are correcting, okay? Now, bringing our he's a teenager. Repeated bedwettings. The parents adjust their responses. When he wets the bed, they just calmly clean it up and they reassure him, letting him know, hey, it's okay. You're not in any kind of trouble. We're not going to punish you, right? Then it reduces the accidents, right? So A says positive feedback loop. We don't see any behavior that's amplifying or any responses that's amplifying. So A would be out. B says negative feedback loop. I like their response, but let's look at the other ones. C says triangulation. There doesn't seem to be like there's 2 people that have some conflict or 2 people that have anxiety and they're drawing a third person in, so we will get rid of that. And D is a symptom prescription. Come on now. Y'all been listening to me for too long. We know what a symptom prescription is, okay? Now, if you take a look at B, negative feedback loop, right? It's correcting. He was wet in the bed, and then his wet in the bed behaviors, they reduced, right? His accidents reduced, and so did his anxiety. It's correcting. It sent it back, okay? Now, that's how you look at positive and negative feedback loops, and we'll dive into it because I'm doing a video for it anyways, okay? A couple reports that minor disagreements quickly escalate into full-blown argument. When one partner yells, the other yells louder. The therapist notices that attempts to calm one partner often makes the other partner more defensive. Which systemic concept best describes this pattern? Again, this is your classic negative and positive feedback. Now, if we take a look at this, minor disagreements quickly escalate, right? One yells, other gets louder. The therapist notices the attempts to calm one partner often makes the other partner defensive. So now we've got they're amplifying. The behaviors are amplifying. We got some escalations that's going on, right? So it wouldn't make it negative feedback loop. It would make it a positive one. And it's not circular questioning. There's no questions being asked in here, right? And there's nothing in here talking about stability with equilibrium within the family system. So C would also be out. But we got some positive feedback loops that are going on. That is what a positive feedback loop looks like within a question. The behaviors are amplifying. The responses and the behaviors are escalating, making it a positive feedback loop. Okay. Louis, 18, and Carlos, 20, comes to see you for an initial session. They have been married for about a year, and Louis is concerned about their fighting. Several days ago, a neighbor called the police because of a loud argument. Carlos was arrested and held in custody overnight for physical assault. Louis did not press charges because they both agree it will never happen again. Louis believes that he was at fault when Carlos began to hit him because he egged him on. Louis divulged that this is not the first time Carlos hit him. What would be your first intervention? Okay, now we got a lot that's going on here between Louis and Carlos, so let's go back and take a look. It's for their initial session. They've been married over a year. They've been fighting. A couple days ago, the neighbors called the police because they was loud. Carlos was arrested. He was held overnight in custody for physical assault. Charges have been filed, but they both agree that it'll never happen again, even though Carlos, this isn't the first time that it has happened between the two of them. So what is going to be our first intervention? So automatically we should be thinking about what? Intimate partner violence. And when we're thinking about intimate partner violence, we need to be looking for an answer response that is going to do what? Separate Louis and separate Carlos. Keep this in mind. That will not always be the obvious response. A says refer them to couples group. Nope. And I'm going to tell you why. B says separate the couple and directly address the issues of Louis's safety. Okay, let's take a look at the other ones. C says provide individual therapy to both Louis and Carlos. Nope, and I'll tell you why, but let's look at this. D says work with them on issues pertaining to past patterns of abuse, for the love of God. Okay, now let's take a look at this. Referring them to couples group is not good enough. How are you going to put them both in couples group? It's a contradiction to therapy. They can't be together. They need to be separated, right? B says separate the couple and directly address the issues of his safety. Sounds good. That sounds really good, right? Because separating them would be the best thing for us to do. And then to address Louis's safety, since Carlos seems to be the aggressor, right? C says provide individual therapy to both Louis and Carlos. You can't. You've already had them for therapy. You can't. They need to go to their own separate individual therapist. We cannot continue to see them anymore. They need to be referred out to their own individual therapist. D says work with them. No, it's a contradiction to therapy. Get rid of D. Any intimate partner violence, do not choose answer responses that has you continuing to work with them. It can't happen. B is the best answer. Separate the couple and directly address the issues of his safety, of Louis's safety. Now, here's the thing. B is also another obvious response that says to separate. Separate, suspend are two of some of your obvious answer responses for intimate partner violence questions. But don't always expect the obvious, because what if the obvious of separate and suspend is not there? You still have to go for the best answer. There was a question in the group that said to refer one to anger management and the other one to individual therapy. And out of those 4 responses, that was the best answer response. Instead of separate the couple and suspend couples therapy, it was refer one to anger management and refer the other to individual therapy. That was the best answer out of the 4. I hope this is making sense to each and every one of you. A couple presents for therapy reporting high conflict, including episodes of verbal aggression and threats. The therapist is concerned about emotional safety in sessions. A first step in determining further conjoint therapy would be to assess the what. Let's go back and look. Parents, a couple presents for therapy, high conflict, episodes of verbal aggression, threats. The therapist is concerned about emotional safety. A first step in determining further conjoint therapy would be to assess what. A says partners' individual communication styles. Why? Communication styles has nothing to do with whether or not if they're going to continue in therapy or not. They're threatening each other. There's verbal aggression. Furthermore, shouldn't we be even assessing for if they're a good fit for couples therapy in the first place? Right? Partners' individual communication styles? No. B says current risk of harm or escalation of violence. Okay, I like that. C says couple skills to attend a workshop. What? They threatening each other. But you just stick them in a workshop, why don't you? That'll solve everything. No. D says couples goals for the relationship. Lady, no. So now we're just going to assess the goals that they want for the relationship when it's clear that there's red flags in the vignette. There's verbal aggression. There's threats. You cannot ignore it. C also has you ignoring the fact that there's verbal aggression and they're making threats to each other. And A also as well. B is the best answer, current risk of harm or escalation of violence. Now, even again for this question here, there's nothing about separating them or suspended therapy or even assessing as much as like if there is intimate partner violence, right? This is just us continuing to go on in therapy with them, right? But you cannot ignore that there are red flags in the vignette. C and D is ignoring that there's red flags. No, you can't just stick them in a workshop or talk about goals for the relationship when there's verbal aggression and threats that are going on. So remember, some of these questions, they will not have the obvious answer. A 42-year-old woman, this is the last one, and this is kind of like a foreshadow into what we're going to be doing next week, because I know somebody said they wanted to do termination questions and treatment planning and stuff. So a 42-year-old woman, Elena, has been in therapy with an MFT for the past 5 years to work through her social anxiety. Over time, she has made steady improvements and now feels comfortable attending community events and maintaining close relationships. Recently, she became engaged, and both she and her fiance are interested in starting premarital counseling. At the same time, Elena expresses wanting to keep individual sessions because she worries that without them, her progress will fade. Okay, so this is your classic termination question. She's made progress. There's no need for you to keep her in therapy, and you'll learn that pretty soon about these kind of questions. She's been with her MFT for 5 years. She's made steady improvements over for her social anxiety. She's even getting married. She's just got some anxiety that's going on, right? So A says reassure Elena about her concerns in individual therapy. Offer to provide premarital counseling for the couple under a new treatment plan. Absolutely not. And first of all, what are you reassuring her about? About her anxiety? It's normal. It is normal. You've been with her for 5 years. The therapist has been with her for 5 years. You're just not going to end just individual therapy just like that. You just can't do that. And then you're also not going to do premarital therapy with her and her husband. You're going to refer them to somebody else. B says add the fiance into the existing treatment plan. Absolutely not. While continuing regular sessions? No. She's completed her treatment goals. She needs to go. The client cannot hold you hostage, and you cannot hold your client hostage. When they've made those goals, send them out. C says continue with individual therapy. Nope. Why? She's made her goals. She's had improvements. She's getting married. You've been with her for 5 years. There's no need to keep her in therapy. C is out. D says validate Elena's fears, begin discussing termination, then slowly taper the individual sessions. D is your best answer. Fears and anxiety for ending therapy, it's normal. You're going to begin discussing termination. You're just not going to terminate. And then you're going to slowly taper off the individual sessions over time. You are not going to be working with her and her new boo thing, whoever the case may be. They need to be referred to somebody else. Okay? That sums it up for these questions. If you've missed Wednesday night, this was your lucky chance to get the chance to get to know these questions and get to find out these answer responses. I will see each and every one of you next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. I will repost the link no later than 7 p.m. I do not get off work until 6 p.m. Give me time to get off work, get my things together, and then get home, okay? No need to ask where the link is or when the link is going to be posted, because I will provide it to you. If you cannot wait in order to find the link, it is in your featured tab within the group. I will also start posting it on the YouTube channel as well, okay? Give me time. I know it gets like people think like if I'm not going to do it, I will let each and every one of you know ahead of time, like in advance. Carrie is not lazy. I don't like to drag my ass, okay? Alrighty. I will see each and every one of you next Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. sharp. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.